Wonderful. Welcome and Happy New Year. My name is Allison Jaden. I'm a Special Projects Manager with the Maryland Department of the Environment, and excited to be with you guys today to give a brief information session about the Maryland Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, and then open it up for questions and answers as best as I can cover them, and open dialogue all together today. I wanted to provide a little bit of an overview. Our presentation, the information component of this session, is going to cover both the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, that's CPRG for short, the planning grant, of which the Maryland Department of the Environment is leading for the state of Maryland. And we will also touch on the implementation grant, which is the competitive grant portion of the CPRG. I do like to always make a plug for other federal resources, and so I will do so, and then we'll turn off the recording and open up for Q&A, either via the chat or coming off mute, and having some open discussion together. As I mentioned at the top of the call, for those of you guys who have been on, I do have some overview information you've likely heard before, but we do have some folks who this is their first CPRG info session. The objectives for CPRG for the state of Maryland align with the EPA's overall objectives for the program: tackling climate pollution and reducing it, accelerating work to address environmental injustices, delivering cleaner air, and ensuring for Maryland, we're looking out to make sure Maryland is competitive for implementation federal funds that come from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. And we want to drive successful local level implementation for measures that reduce greenhouse gas emissions all across the state of Maryland. So excited to be talking with you guys about these important objectives. The CPRG is an exciting and new program funded out of the Inflation Reduction Act and led by the EPA. And we've got some really quick deadlines coming up as the beginning part of this program here in the new year, 2024. We're looking at, first, this is going to braid together the planning grant deadlines as well as the implementation grant deadlines. So for the implementation grant, there are optional letters of intent due to the EPA on February 1st, and MDE will be submitting a letter of intent to meet that deadline. Those are going to be optional, and the details are available in the EPA's NOFO about what is expected and why they're hoping to do that. Important deliverable as a part of our planning grant is the submission of the Priority Climate Action Plan to the EPA on March 1st. And then due to the EPA for the implementation grant are the implementation grants themselves on April 1st that do have to be tied to measures that are represented in those PCAPs submitted to the EPA early this year. A little later on, looking ahead, we do have another planning grant deliverable due in the summer of 2025 for our comprehensive climate action plans. And then rounding out the full planning grant program, there's a status report about what has happened as a part of the CPRG initiative by 2027. So there is some excitement happening here in the top of 2024, but this is just the beginning of the CPRG program, which will go on for a few more years as well. The state of Maryland is providing statewide coordination for the CPRG and leading a local support program for 12 of Maryland's counties. They're listed here. There are also 3 additional planning grants for metropolitan statistical areas that include jurisdictions in Maryland. You can see those listed here. Many of you all, I think, are participating. There may be some of you participating in some of those initiatives that have steering committees, technical committees, and have been assembling parallel deliverables to the EPA as a part of this program. And the Maryland Department of the Environment is coordinating with all of those concurrent planning activities, which is really exciting, both from within Maryland and then also with our neighboring states. So what is our approach on the planning grant? We are in the midst of preparing our PCAP, that Priority Climate Action Plan due to the EPA early this year. And we are doing so using over 15 years of our greenhouse gas emission inventories, planning, stakeholder engagement. But the two big items I really wanted to emphasize in our information session today is that we have published Maryland's Climate Pollution Reduction Plan, and it is now online on our website. And Christian should be able to drop some links here in the chat for folks to take a look at that if you have not done so already. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that report. And as some of you have heard me talk about before, this is really the foundation for what we will be submitting as our CPRG PCAP, and was developed to meet the requirements from the 2022 Climate Solutions Now Act. And then also really important that I want to highlight today is that in addition to all of that body of work on greenhouse gas inventory, plans, stakeholder engagement, we are also wanting to hear from you about ideas for near-term, high priority and implementation-ready greenhouse gas emission reduction projects measures. And you can submit those via a form that we have on the website through the end of this week. So hoping that you've seen the form before and are thinking about what you might want to be submitting to make sure that we are able to cover any of those activities as a part of our PCAP, and raise awareness and share information with us about considerations for the state's implementation grant as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about those, but those are kind of what's new and what I want to highlight here today on our information session. So our big announcement for us, a lot of work went in, and just before the end of 2023, on December 28th, we published Maryland's Climate Pollution Reduction Plan. It is MDE's final plan to reduce statewide greenhouse gas emissions 60% from 2006 levels by 2031 and set us on our path to achieve net zero emissions by 2045. It is, to our understanding, the most ambitious statewide greenhouse gas emission reduction plan in the country. And so we are really looking forward to working with all of you to meet the goals that are provided to us by the Climate Solutions Now Act of 2022. And you can take a look at the full plan as well as all the technical appendices and supporting details on MDE's website. And really looking forward to working together across the state to continue on this very important work. What you'll see in the plan, and we're not going to get into the full details here today, but I did want to just make sure to highlight for you the plan does take and build off of the work of the Climate Pathway Report that hopefully many of you got to take a look at and come to an information session over the summer in 2023. And it does cover all sectors of Maryland's economy. And you can see those represented here on the slides. On the left-hand side, you can see the modeling of what Maryland's current policies do to reduce greenhouse gas emission measures. So this new plan does call for additional policies to meet the goals of the Climate Solutions Now Act. And you can see that the current and planned policies outlined in the new report and plan do achieve the state's goals to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions as required by the Climate Solutions Now Act. And you can see that we need to do so across all different parts, the electricity sector, the transportation sector, our waste management sector, all hands on deck here to work toward these climate action goals. So I do encourage you all to take a look at the report and the plan, we do want to emphasize that this will serve as the foundation of our PCAP to the EPA coming up just ahead. But it is not the only thing that we want to include. So we want to hear from you all directly. And I think Christian already dropped in the chat the form to submit measures that reduce greenhouse gas emissions from your parts of the state and your areas of interest. So the form is available through the end of this week. It does include an ask for general contact information, general details. It does ask for information about the measure or project and how it will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And there is a section to indicate whether or not you or your organization will be applying directly for the competitive implementation funds as a measure, or if you are interested in being considered for to be included as part of the state's application to submit to the competitive funds. So really just trying to get that, your feedback and include that as a part to make sure we're meeting the mark as it relates to our PCAP submission and to drive the most competitive implementation grants going into the EPA to bring funds to all of us across Maryland to do this important work. Just another overview around the implementation grants themselves. Eligible entities are states and municipalities, so these are for governments or coalitions of governments. There is an upcoming letter of intent that is optional, due at this February 1st. And then the objectives of the competitive grant really do match with the spirit of the whole program, but do want to highlight them here that they are looking for greenhouse gas emission reductions and do have a special emphasis on those that can be achieved before 2030 or by 2030. They do, the EPA is looking for benefits to communities, particularly low income and disadvantaged communities. They want to see utilization or complementary use of other federal funding sources and are looking for innovative policies that can be scaled up. I've shared this before, but I think this is a really useful slide provided by the EPA and how they've structured this grant. They are going to be awarding and evaluating grants by funding tiers. And so you can see the tiers that the EPA expects to award the grants from the implementation grant competition. MDE is coordinating with other states in our region to explore the possibility of multi-state coalition to approach that Tier A application. So we are talking with our neighboring states and with others to see if there is a viable path for a very innovative and significant multi-state coalition application for Tier A. We are also, as I've mentioned, compiling information from all of you and from across Maryland to assemble a Maryland state-led application in the Tier B category. And then we are hoping to support and provide as much support and information exchange to support local jurisdictions or coalitions of local jurisdictions approaching other parts of the competition. So there's a lot going on here, but the EPA has laid out some layers for this competition, both on the funding levels, and they've also indicated that they will explore and look at applications for different measure types and different measures for within a particular geography. So this, I think, is kind of a useful way to think about the competition. And then wanted to highlight again, this is all available on the EPA's website, and I definitely encourage you all to take a look there. But about the overall criteria for evaluation for the competitive implementation grant, really that importance of the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions as being the largest category. But again, they do divide that out for to emphasize the need to drive near-term greenhouse gas emission reductions. And then you can see the, also the real importance here about driving community benefits to low-income and disadvantaged communities. Before I close and we open up for some Q&A, I did want to mention some important additional federal resources. All of the Maryland state agencies are coordinating together with Governor Moore's federal investment team, which is providing kind of an organized, centralized approach for pursuing federal funds across state agencies in Maryland. I do also want to highlight two really great resources on the Maryland Energy Administration's page and the Maryland Department of Transportation's page around other opportunities, other federal opportunities. And I did mention around the CPRG, they are looking for, the EPA is looking to see how applicants are leveraging other existing federal funding sources. So becoming familiar with those is very useful. And then I did want to flag, there is continued to be additional information out about the unique and exciting provision of the Inflation Reduction Act, which includes direct pay or can be called elective pay tax incentives for tax-exempt and governmental entities to receive the value of the tax credits from 12 of the Inflation Reduction Act tax credits for spending that you did in 2023. So that is pretty great because that's money that you can go out and get to hopefully invest in future projects. And so put some links on there. And for any nonprofit organizations represented here on the call today, I did also want to call your attention to another exciting EPA federal funding opportunity called the Environmental and Climate Justice Community Change Grants. And so definitely want to encourage you to take a look at that. Eligible entities in that competition are nonprofit organizations or coalitions of nonprofit organizations. And a nifty tool I've been enjoying and would encourage folks to take a look at the Climate Program Portal that organizes quite a lot of the BIL and IRA federal funding opportunities here to support climate action. And so definitely recommend folks to sign up there. I found it to be a really useful resource, and I do have a great newsletter roundup that highlights new opportunities for federal funding for this important work. So with that, I want to make sure you have our email address and our short link to share with others around the climate pollution reduction grants for Maryland. And we can go ahead and stop the recording, Christian.